Welcome to Mostly Minutia. I'm Colleen Lindell. This is episode 11, Jordan Toronto. Isn't that a great name? Jordan Toronto. Jordan is an actor, a writer, a comedian. She's a mother of 3, and she's just doggone interesting. In this episode, we talk about the tensions of being a mom while at the same time pursuing your dreams. The so-called having your cake and can't I eat it too? We also talk about what Jordan loves about being a mom, as well as the ironic role comedians play in being the current day messengers of hilarity, while at the same time feeling quite isolated. Here's Jordan.
Well, sometimes I'll feel like, yeah, my profile, my life is interesting, but I'll sometimes have a hard time admitting that, like, just me, like, alone, you know, not just sort of like what I'm doing on paper, that it's like, no, you are interesting as a human being, just, and so that's nice to hear. And sometimes a little hard to be like, okay, yeah, I am. I'm like you in that I'm super interested in other people, I think. And so I think sometimes interesting people are also really interested in other people. And I think that's true of my kids. Sometimes I've noticed that, like, my son is so curious about so many things, and because he's like always wanting to learn things, it makes him interesting too. You know, I think it just makes him have more to say about so many things. And so I think I could admit that I'm interesting.
I wanted to hear about your kids actually and your life before you moved to California, because you guys are new to California.
Yeah. We are about a year and a half, like July of 2014, we moved here. So we moved when my kids had just finished. Well, my youngest little guy was 2 and in preschool, and then my daughter had just finished kindergarten, and my son had just finished 3rd grade. So they came into a new school then that August in 1st and 4th grade, and now this year they're in 2nd and 5th. And so it was a huge change.
What are their names?
Oh, my oldest, he just turned 11, and he is Kaylor, Kaylor. So it's a family name, my husband's mom's maiden name, actually.
Ooh.
And actually his middle name is my mom's maiden name, Gregory, which happened to just work. So he's Kaylor Gregory, and he's got both, like, legacies of his grandma. So both of his grandmas. So I
Kaylor
like
Gregory Toronto.
Yeah, isn't that cool? He could be like a 3-namer guy if he wanted. Like Robert John Leonard or whatever. Like I think he's got a cool name.
Well, how cool is Toronto? That
Toronto
is like the
so
best
cool.
last name.
And I always used to say, like, I don't know if I'm going to take my husband's name, but if I like it. And I was like, Toronto is awesome. I'm absolutely taking that.
What's your maiden name?
Roller, Rohler. I was Jordan Heather Roller when I was born. And marrying Matt, I loved Toronto. I thought it was super cool. And I'm like, Jordan Toronto is awesome.
Yeah.
And but now I keep Roller as my middle name because that's the one I associate with more. And I was like, Heather is fine, but I don't associate that with me as much. So
No, Jordan Toronto is so bomb. And
I know. I'm very geographical.
It's also very unisex. It's so strong. It's like, bam, like Jordan Toronto.
I know. Thanks. I know. I totally married into it. I got it legitimately. I know. But I was like, I will take that name. And I actually mean I will take it. I want it. I know. I'm like, I didn't take it away from him. He still has it. But I was like, yep, that should be mine.
When I first met you, I was like, are you serious? That's your name?
I know. It seems like I just like made it up. Yeah. Sort of. I know.
Yeah, it does seem like a show name, doesn't it?
It does, but I know
it's
it totally isn't.
legit.
It is. It's totally my name.
Mm-hmm.
And but you're right. It's like unisex too, which means it can kind of just like
you can float in and out of spaces. Like your name goes before you.
I like that.
When someone reads like, oh, Jordan Toronto is doing stand-up tonight, for instance.
That's true.
It like immediately makes people interested, I think.
Right. That's true. And actually, Kaylor we were going to do that for a boy or a girl, but I'm really glad that we ended up using it for a boy, because then using my mom's maiden name as his middle name ended up being a really sweet thing to be able to do. And so, because we would have used Kaylor for a girl, we just liked it. It was actually, it's my husband's middle name too, and his mom's maiden name. So we were like, Kaylor, I just like it. And but I think if we used it for a girl, it would have fallen into like the sea of Kayleys and Kaylas that there tend to be.
Yeah.
Which is fine, but I think it ends up, he just, we call him Kaler. Like there's no real nickname, and I like that. I like that. And so then, speaking of, then my daughter is 8, and she is Clementine. Now that is not unisex at all.
Beautiful.
But I do love it. We just loved it. For some people, they're like, oh, it's old fashioned, which I think it kind of has that, but it also has sort of like a, kind of like a spunky thing too. So it's not. Yeah, I think it kind of really represents the feel of her very well, actually. But Clementine, we thought, oh my gosh, she's never going to be able to spell it till she's in college. But she's 8, and she's been able to spell it for a long time now.
Yeah, it was
10
easy
letters.
for her to latch onto that.
Yes, I think she did. I mean, at first she said, when I was in kindergarten, I just wrote Clem a lot. That's okay, honey. But now she writes it all out. And
I have an Uncle Clem.
You do? Is it Clement or something?
It is.
Oh, yeah.
He's wonderful.
Oh.
Yeah, love him. He's so funny, too.
That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I think it's a great name. Oh, but people do. They always say, what do you call her? And I'm always like, Clementine. See how that didn't take that long out of my life? Because I think it looks so long that people think, oh my gosh, you must have to shorten it. And I thought, it's just 3 syllables. Emily. It's like there are many shorter looking names that I'm like, we actually can take the whole 3 syllables and just say it, and it doesn't take up that much time out of our life. So it cracks me up that people always assume, like, but what do you call her? I'm like
for short. They're like,
I mean, we do sometimes call her Clem or whatever, but I'm always like, I feel no need to like officially shorten it when we named her that because we love that name. So I don't know.
Yeah.
And I understand because I know, I mean, I understand what people mean, but it does kind of make me giggle because I'm like, I think it just like looks too long to say or something.
Yeah.
I'm always like, no, we actually can just say her name. And then our little guy has a very short name, Sky, S-K-Y. So he's he knows how to spell his now, and he's 4, just turned 4 today.
And you said all your kids' birthdays are
within like 2.5 weeks of each other. Clementine is October 26th. Then there's Halloween. Then a week later is my oldest son's November 7th. And then 6 days after that is his little brother, Sky's. So we are now on the 3rd birthday of birthday season. And we are going to try to enter into Thanksgiving time where I'm going to ask them to be thankful and not ask for anything else until like December 1st. I know I keep trying to institute like, okay, so now we're going to be thankful. And I know that stores don't really have a lot of Thanksgiving things out because they don't make money on Thanksgiving. But we are not going to go straight to Christmas right now, people.
Oh, that's interesting. I never thought about that before.
True? I really have noticed this with my kids now because it's like they go right from Halloween to Christmas because those are moneymakers. Yeah. Because I'm like, oh, Thanksgiving's just kind of pretty, but they don't make big money on. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, oh. And we're already to Christmas, and it's like, just done with Halloween. And they're like, Mom, we know. And it cracks me up, though, in California because we were coming from living in Pennsylvania for like 10 years. My kids all lived all their lives there up until here. And before that, I've lived in Ohio, where I'm from, and then Michigan and New York. And so I've only ever lived in snowy, cold places. So it kind of makes me giggle here because it feels like you have to force fall a little bit. Like, okay, it is now a new season. And I'll be like, is it really? Like, it's just like a calendar new season because it does not always feel like.
It feels continuous.
No, I mean, now I'm just the last little bit. I'm like, okay, I truly actually want to put on a little jacket in the morning. But I mean, I'm like used to like, the leaves changing and falling. And so here it feels like, okay, I am going to say it is fall in my head because I feel like I have to force it a little bit because I feel like it doesn't just naturally go like, oh, and look, it feels so different in the air. So. Yeah,
they're just putting up like some of the Christmas trees like at the Americana. They put the tree up and I'm like, oh, it's beautiful. And it's 75. But I kind of like it.
I mean, I don't miss snow at all. My kids do a little, but I'm like, let's visit it. I'm fine with that. Let's visit snow because it was like 5 months out of our lives. It was ridiculous. It was just almost half the year, I felt like.
So you grew up in Cleveland. Mm-hmm. Then from Cleveland, you went to Michigan?
I went to Michigan, went to school in Michigan, and that's where I met my husband at University of Michigan. And we were both there for musical theater. And
that's Ann Arbor, right?
Yeah, that's Ann Arbor.
They have a musical theater, like a pretty good musical theater.
They have a great musical theater program that, in fact, has even gotten maybe more and more well-known over the years. So if we tell people now, I mean, it was great when we were there, but I think if we tell, like, I hate to say the younger generation, but somebody in their 20s that we went there, they're like, oh, I'm like, okay, I'll take that. You're impressed. So we went there, and freshman year, my husband, he's from there, actually. So he had family there. So he was already... he was still dating someone from high school who was still in her senior year of high school because he lived in Ann Arbor, so he could still. And so freshman year, we were totally just friends. And I thought he was a sweet boyfriend to his girlfriend. But somehow, and then she broke up with him on her way off to college. And he moved on a lot quicker than I think she thought. And I think he moved on a lot quicker than he thought he was going to, but he didn't know. He was not prepared for me. And so we were really good friends, but yeah. So sophomore year, we just all of a sudden were different. So we've been together since we were 19. So
wow.
And we're 40 now. We're 10 days apart. I'm April 19th. He's April 29th. So we're exactly the same age.
And all your kids are clumped together. And then you guys are.
I know, we're clumped together. And we're always like, April's special too, but I know that October and November is where like most of it happens because you're the children and we're the adults.
When's your anniversary?
August 22nd.
Okay.
So, yeah. So we've been married 17 years, which is crazy. We got married at 23. So we were just out of college. So it was really wonderful, but also almost like hard to really be that sure and happy of somebody so young because there's still a lot of life.
Well, you guys started dating at 19, so you were together for 4 years before you got married. So
yeah.
You felt pretty sure that you wanted to move forward as a couple, right?
We did. We did go through a thing, I think, well, we actually were apart, though, for 2 years. He actually went on a mission for his church, and I was not a member and was like, what? And he actually said to me sophomore year, he goes, I might not be here next year. And I think I literally said, I hope you mean you're dying because I don't know where you're going voluntarily. I was like, you better be dying because why would you leave me? Because we were so like crazy in love, like a few months by like December when we were dating, I was like, where are you going? What do you mean? And he was just really dedicated and he went to Germany for 2 years. So we were apart from like the ages of like 20 and 22. And that is forever. I mean, that's forever at that age, I think. I mean, that's a long time at any age, but...
That's crazy.
So we somehow made it through. And then I ended up transferring to NYU, to New York University, because he was leaving, and then I had two other best friends that ended up leaving to go to North Carolina School of the Arts. And I always think, for my psyche, it might have been better to stay at Michigan where people knew and loved Matt, because I ended up in New York with people who were like, so who is this so-called boyfriend that they almost acted like I was making up? And I thought, oh my gosh, he's real. What have I done? I need to be with people who know him.
Could you communicate with him?
I could, but really like minor, like I wasn't even supposed to call. Like we wrote letters. And at that time we sent back cassette tapes, which should be burned now. I don't know where they are, but no matter what, nobody should ever listen to those again.
Like mixtapes.
They were like kind of like mixtape, but talking to each other and like just kind of agonizing over.
Would you guys use the same tape back and forth?
That's interesting.
You record your conversation, send it to him. He records his, send it to you.
Yeah, it's kind of cool. It seems so archaic now. The idea
I
of
like it.
Continuing on with the cassette tape.
Right.
I love that. You know, I mean, in some ways, it's like kind of maybe sweet for us to listen back, but. Oh, I was so sad and mad at him, but loved him. I couldn't help but love him. It was so hard. And he was like there. He was in this whole other world, and I was at NYU. And at one point, I was doing this experimental theater, this one studio at NYU. I was actually in their musical theater thing there, too. But for one summer, I did this like experimental theater group, and we all went to Amsterdam. And it was like the opposite of whatever he was doing. Like everyone was like doing pot and like topless and then apparently I wrote him because this is like the legend that I don't exactly remember, but he said I wrote him a postcard that says I'm coming and you can't stop me. So I got on a train from Amsterdam to Germany and I just showed up and was like, deal with me, because that was like so taboo. Like people did not do what I did. I saw him. And there was like a whole hoodoo about like he had to like show like the leader of like the mission leader like, well, it seems my girlfriend is actually coming. And so he sort of, I don't know, he called Matt's dad and was trying to get his dad to like send me home. And Matt's dad is always very proud of saying, no. I told them, just let her come. I know you're worried about it, but just let her. And so I'm always like, thank you, Bob, at least for the...
he vouched for you.
And the thing is, they have companions. They had someone else with them all the time. So like there was nothing we could do. We were always with some other guy. So we literally just hung out in his little apartment for one day. It was this very weird but very sweet experience where we just saw each other, and it was like halfway through his 2 years there, and then we said goodbye at a train, it still felt like it was going to be, pretty horrible, but we kind of were like a little hopeful, like, okay, hopefully somehow we'll just make it through this next year. And that wasn't easy either. I mean, oh my gosh. But somehow he came home and we were still just crazy in love with each other. Like, we just couldn't help it. So,
And you were at NYU by then.
I was at NYU and I was graduating, but he then was still going to go back because he had only done 2 years then at University of Michigan. So then he was like, I need to go back. And because he had gone ahead and done so many like AP classes or whatever, he only had to do like a year and a little bit of a summer. So then he had 1 more year before he would graduate. So we had this whole conversation.
Wait, so you guys were split again then?
We weren't. I was going to kill him and trying to find places for him to go in New York City because I was like, you are not going to leave me again. I will kill you. And he was like, no, but I mean, literally, it's going to take me twice as long or more to come back and try to like go to a whole new school in New York. And I thought, okay, I don't care. Just come here. This is where I am now. And so, but somehow he just is like, I'm going back to Michigan and then we'll get married and we're going to go back. We're going to go back to New York together, which is what we ultimately did. That was not the best of times for me.
Wait, so you got
I literally ended up then just following back to Michigan. Did not get married yet until after he was graduated. And so I actually had an agent. The agent was like, that's a terrible idea to leave New York now. And I thought, yes, it is. It's not a career decision. This is clearly love because I really do hear you. This is a really bad idea. People don't just go here, graduate, get an agent and leave. It's not the best idea for one's career. So I left again, which sucked, but also I just was nuts about him. And so we went back to Michigan, but we weren't married. And as much as I was always trying to corrupt this one, we didn't live together. So I was just living on my own in like this apartment waiting to marry this schmo who I loved so much.
Were you working?
I was
somewhere?
working. I was like a leasing consultant at this apartment. I don't remember this time very happily. And then I was working a couple other places and I was just like, yeah. So he's a good guy because to make it through, like, oh, just come on. So then we went back together. Well, okay. So then right when he came back from Germany, we kind of had this conversation because I think we had gotten to a point where we'd put so much energy into like somehow holding it together, just barely. So we finally had a conversation where we were like, okay, you know what? We don't have to stay together, like just based on pure like, but we've gotten this far, like, and we were like, well, that's not a good enough reason to stay together. We have to want to. So I think we really just finally were like, okay, let's let ourselves off the hook. And if there's really a feeling in both of us that we don't want to be together, like we should not just like force it. But then I think like we were like, no, we want to be together. And that was like a significant thing for us to do because I think it finally gave us a little bit like, we're choosing to do this. We're not just sort of like, okay, we're going to keep going on this relationship and just keep chugging. And so I think finally when we were like, we don't have to. It would suck, but it would suck to just kind of keep going in a relationship too that doesn't feel right. So we sort of made a conscious decision to be like, okay, no, I love you and I actually want to be with you now. I think that kind of got us through. And then we got married still very young, especially compared to all of our theater friends who have now, some of them only gotten married, in the last five years or something. And we've been married 17 years, got married at 23. We were young. We got married in Cleveland where I'm from. And then we went off to New York. I was like, now we're going back. And then we were there for like 6 years and we did both work performing. He's a great dancer too. So he's a boy who can dance and I'm a girl who can sing. So they were like, he got more shows than me because he was a little bit more of a rare thing. There's still plenty of boys. I mean, there's still plenty of everybody in New York, but I think he had less competition than me. So he made quite a career of West Side Stories. He's done so many West Side Stories that he's been almost every jet. It's really fun to watch him. He's such a good dancer. But at the end of our time in New York, he discovered that he really loved directing. And so he started writing and directing. And I kind of got jealous because I think all my life I do love performing and I do love acting. But I think it's always still not felt exactly like what I'm totally meant to do. At that time, I was still like, I'm an actor. That's what I do. And I kind of was jealous because I could just tell in him that he was like, he'd like found what he just loves that just felt like his niche.
Yeah.
And he is like, I'm a better director than a performer. And he's a great performer. He was a great performer. But he was like, I know this is it. And so that's when we moved to Pennsylvania. because he went to grad school for directing, and that was really good.
Was that also at NYU?
We left New York, and he actually found a grad program in Pennsylvania at Penn State, where he ended up. Then when we ended up there for 3 years for the grad program, and then got a job right out of there, and then worked for 7 years there. So we were in Pennsylvania for 10 years.
Wow.
And that turned out to be very strange for me, who always thought I was going to be like, just doing my own career, and thought, oh, I'm going to have kids. But I ended up being rather traditional than more than I ever thought I would be.
Were you in musical theater?
Yeah.
Was it all, did you do that in high school too?
I did do it in high school, and I loved it in high school. Yeah.
That's so cool. So you were pursuing that, like that was your dream, was to be
It was.
in musical theater.
So, I mean, like Broadway was the dream and didn't get on Broadway. So that was always one thing that even like after moving to Pennsylvania, about like, not constantly, but I'd say about twice a year, I'd have to like break down and just be like crying to Matt and be like, I never got on Broadway. And he's like, it's not too late. Someday, life is long. Someday. But I would, that was like kind of like one where I thought, okay, that was kind of like the pinnacle of what I thought, I was going after. And so when I didn't, and then we decided to move to Pennsylvania, and then I was pregnant when we moved to Pennsylvania with my first kid. And so that changed everything. But I was also so kind of burned out and kind of sick of auditioning and sick of the like hustle. And I really did want to have a baby. I really did want to be a mom. I didn't quite know exactly like what it would mean to me or what it would do, but I did know I wanted it, but I also was sad. I have to admit, like that was the dream, and I didn't reach the dream. Like that was the original dream, I would say. And now it's not necessarily it's not the dream anymore. And actually, when I first had a baby, I ended up bonding with some other moms in our little apartment complex, and life was like so sweet in Pennsylvania. At first, I thought, oh my gosh, this is just glorious compared to just like the hustle of New York, and like this is totally like such a purposeful, wonderful life. And that lasted for a while. and then I had a second and a third, and bless their hearts, they got a much more antsy mom, I'm sure, both of those guys, because, all of a sudden I was like, I do love this. This does give me tremendous purpose. And I love these people like crazy, but I never, ever loved being a stay-at-home mom. And yet I basically decided that is basically what I was, because I was somewhere where I wasn't going to get on Broadway there. There wasn't a whole lot to do. There were some shows to do, and I did some stuff here and there. And actually, that's where I wrote 2 one-woman shows, though, in my time there, about motherhood. And that actually made me kind of realize that actually becoming a mom kind of gave me this whole new, like, creative identity that I think has ended up being huge to me, that I would never have, like, known. I just kind of was always like, well, I'm just going to try to do whatever I think someone my age does, and in my 20s, and then like writing about my life as a mom and kind of commiserating with other moms, and then I wrote that as like kind of a musical where I kind of rewrote some lyrics of songs that I loved, and I did a bunch of singing and just little sort of little bit of just talking in between. Just I had like a little mini, mostly mom audience, I think. So that was very sweet. And in fact,
you were performing for them.
Yeah, it was like just Pennsylvania, like people who would come. So it wasn't all like moms, but there were a lot of moms who came, and it was very touching, I think, because there was like a very commiserating experience. And I think maybe the one thing that I can do well is like put words to stuff that other people were feeling, especially about motherhood, and I think can make it funny, even though it's not always funny.
Yes.
And I think people could like laugh and cry over like how hard and amazing it is. And like, I did kind of realize that it was another dream, but it was a dream I didn't know I had. Like, I knew I wanted kids, but I didn't realize that it was like going to be that strong of a thing in me. I think I didn't know just how much it would mean to me. And actually, even though I kind of hated with all of my being, like the idea of just being like this traditional stay-at-home mom, like I was like, this isn't me, I hate this. But I didn't realize how much I would love just being a mom, though. Like actually being their mom, I do adore that. I wasn't going to go off and just like have any job to get. I thought, well, I'd rather be with them than go work somewhere that, isn't my passion. So I just did my passion when I could. And then I did a second one-woman show a couple years later when my older 2 were like 1 and 4. And I ended up using these like life-size Muppet puppets because I realized that I was like, oh my gosh, I want them to have a voice in this too. I feel like there are songs that they would sing. So Matt, my husband, was like, well, we have those 2 puppets that your sister gave us. I feel like you could just, and I'm like, well, I'm not a puppeteer. I don't know. He's like, you're an actor. Just move their mouths and make them talk. Like, so I ended up doing a show like with my Muppet kids, and they each had their own little solos, and then I would sing with them. And
Did
it
you
was
have
really
like a
kind
little
of touching.
stage or something?
Yeah,
like
there was this little mini stage in this little lobby area of their like professional theater in Pennsylvania, and it was just this tiny little area. But it was kind of perfect for what I was doing. So that was really kind of a sweet moment too. And I have to admit, like, being a little bit more of like a big fish in a little sea, and just kind of getting away from it and being a mom and not being so like, I think while I was in New York, it was just like, well, this is what you do and this is how it has to go. And so I wasn't very flexible with myself or create. And I used to say, oh, I should do my own show. And then once I write something, maybe I'll go and see if there's like a little cabaret space where I could do it at. But that is not the order that I should do things in, because it turns out the way that I ended up doing these shows was because my husband said, would you ever like to have a week in this little like summer, like everyone, there's these little shows happening in the summer. And he said, do you want me to try to get you a week? And I said yes, thinking probably it wouldn't happen. I don't know why. And he came home and he was like, oh, you've got June 15th or something. And I thought, I have to write something and it has to be good. So clearly a little fire under me is how I do stuff, because I never, ever did it in New York.
So someone just gives you a due date.
So, a due date helped me a lot. But I think that was the beginning of me liking writing and liking creating something that came out of me, and loving performing my own stuff even more than anything else. So then I think that was kind of the beginnings of it. And then when we moved here, we had already started writing. Long ago in New York City, I did some stand-up comedy. That was just when we were married and pre-kids, so it was a whole different material. I know, I'm always like, what did I talk about?
Where were you performing?
I was performing I got to perform at Caroline's once, which was really fun. That was after I took this class with this wonderful teacher who I loved. I don't know what's happening with him now, Tommy Koenig. But I loved him, and he helped me feel really inspired. And then I performed a lot at this place called the Comedy Cellar. But it's always the thing, and that's still true here a little bit, but I'm sort of doing it more at my own speed, being a mom of 3. It's always a little exhausting to be at that stage of comedy where, you're not known yet and you're not getting booked for shows, you're not getting paid for anything, and so they're basically like, sure, you can perform here, and people have, liked me, but basically at that stage you just have to guarantee them to put people in the seats in order to perform. So it's like a stressful life. And I always thought, like in New York, I was like, oh, I can't do this anymore. I feel like I'm begging my friends to come time after time, and then I'm like, oh my gosh, am I telling the same jokes? My friends are so sick of me. And so I was like, oh. And then what you do is you don't even sit with these people who I love. I'd sit off in the corner just nervously looking at my little note cards, with other people just sitting alone nervously looking at their note cards, and there's like no connection. So for something that's so, once you're on stage, so like about connecting with people, it's like so ridiculously isolating, like up until that moment that you're on stage. So I was like, I don't know if I like this. I might hate this life because I like being with people. And I thought, this is weirdly like, gives me this satisfaction only for like 5 minutes when I'm on the stage. And so I kind of, after a while, I was like, oh, I don't know, maybe this isn't for me. So when I came back here, I thought, well, I'm going to take a class again so I can have kind of some comrades and some people to kind of get back started again. And that helped because it wasn't like this lonely pursuit again. And then started performing a lot of flappers right here in Burbank, which is close to home. And I like them, and they actually seem to care about putting on a good show for their audience. And I feel more proud of inviting people and stuff. So, but I still have that struggle. It does. And I think it is communal, especially when you have kind of like a little group that you like to perform with. But ultimately, it's so weird, and I kind of see why a lot of comedians are depressed and lonely people, because it's so weird. Because on the one hand, it's so communal, and on the other hand, there's a part of it that's so like all on your own, like writing it and then just sitting there waiting for your spot, and then there's something weirdly isolating about this thing that like shouldn't be, because it feels so like the opposite of what it's meant to do. Yeah,
it's like how you were making those one woman shows and then just performing them for your friends who are moms, other moms. It should be like that. Like, I know, where you're in a group of friends and you happen to be the one in the group that wants to like perform in front of your friends and make them laugh or make them, feel something
Yes.
or relate.
Right. But you do feel like you're part of something in the first place and not just sort of like the little like lonely person who gets up and people laugh and then you're like, bye, I'll never see you again. Yeah. Like that is a little sad to me. So that's a part that is not good for me, someone like me, I think, who likes.
It's strange. Maybe there's certain places in LA where they really foster community, like being part of a group or something. But the other weird thing is why I like comedians so much is that they do make you feel included.
Yes.
Because they let you know that you're not the only one feeling what you're feeling.
I do love that. And I love when I see a good comedian who puts words to stuff that I'm like, that's exactly right.
Yeah, that's exactly how I feel.
But you've now just said it. And now I realize that you've had like the same experience as me. And that's very like, that is like a really satisfying, like human experience when you realize, oh my gosh, we've felt that same thing, had that same experience.
Yeah. Most of the time when somebody just says it out loud, it's hysterical sounding. But I'm like, why wasn't that so funny when it was sitting inside of me? I've never said it out loud before, but it's funny how when someone just calls a spade, you're like, that's actually kind of funny.
Right. And I think the humor is in like that total recognition because we kind of are like, oh, thank you for saying that.
Yeah.
Like almost like, oh my gosh, because I really do think that that's where movies and TV and comedians and any of these like media that help us to like get little windows into other people's souls, I think are like the most successful is when we kind of are like, yes, thank you. It's like so validating sometimes.
It's super validating and it's kind of cleansing.
We actually laugh. I know it is cleansing, you know? And I guess that's part of it. Like we laugh or cry, but somehow we get something out. That's like you said, like inside me, it didn't feel that funny.
Yeah, it wasn't that funny, but now.
Like when someone else said it, I'm like, that's funny. And maybe it's just so funny that you realize like, oh my gosh, like that's not just my weird thing. That's a weird thing about the world or that other people.
It's a really bizarre thing.
Yeah. And other people
that we're
address
all doing.
that it is weird or whatever. I know. And so when people say that, I think maybe that's just this funny, like need to laugh. But laughter is somehow that like moment of recognition or.
It's strange to me that the comedian has to feel isolated or ends up being isolated.
I know,
or
it seems so opposite.
They find the things that are humorous in life and then deliver that as a message to us.
I know it's like,
but they're the ones that feel isolated.
But I know, right? That is true. That's really kind of not how that should go because, like you said, it's the very opposite for the audience. All of a sudden, not feeling isolated, right? Kind of going, oh, I'm not alone. And the comedian going, right, you're not. But I feel so very alone.
Yeah, but it's like they're delivering the funny news of the time.
Yes.
But they feel alone. It's not fair, kind of.
That isn't fair. And maybe we need to do, and I think part of that is for me, and maybe more like when I did that one-woman show and I had so much of my audience was people who got it, who were fellow moms. Maybe I need to produce shows that are specifically like, for women or for moms or, you know, and actually create a community around the show, like you said. Mm-hmm. And I happen to be the one who gets up, but it's not my little alone time of, you know, agonizing over it and then just showing up and being with them for a few minutes. But it's a time when everyone can bond.
Yeah.
I know. Somehow the community has to be part of it longer or something for the comic to feel.
Like after a comedy show, I feel like I would, but this is me, I'm a natural encourager. I want to go and tell the comedians how much I enjoyed the performance and like why and what pieces of it I really loved. And I don't know if that's welcomed or not, if that would be a weird thing, but that's what that's how I feel usually.
Me too. Well, and I think it's actually gotten me, but obviously we are people who are fascinated by people and want to learn. And once we've learned something about them, then you feel this connection and I guess that's why when you watch people on TV and you realize, okay, they're not my friend. They don't know me, but I feel like I know them. Like they've now shared all this stuff, especially if it's You know, if it's a comic doing a special, or if it's a comic on stage, or even like a sitcom that tells your life, you feel like and you feel like you could walk up to that person and be like, you know me, you understand me.
Yeah.
But they don't
Yeah, they don't.
necessarily. But some might. I mean, I love that. I love that if people are like, I so relate to what you just said, because then I do feel like, oh, and then I feel less alone, even though I know I'm the one who kind of was the one pointing it out. And I guess, you know, of course I inherently understood that this is kind of a common, whatever I'd be pointing out was common enough that hopefully people would laugh and understand it. But even still, I think someone coming back around and telling me just how much that hit a chord with them is awesome to hear.
So feedback for Jordan Toronto is welcome.
Feedback for Jordan Toronto is always welcome. I say that now, and then I'll be like, okay, I'm good. No, I don't think I would ever not want to talk about stuff.
You're like, no, I'm good. I don't need your feedback.
No, I don't think. Oh, that would be so depressing. Just
I don't
if I get
need
to that
your
point,
compliments.
Yuck. I know. I can't imagine people who don't want it. It makes me so sad. I'm like, how is it that you want to do this, but then you don't want to hear how it affects people? I mean, I think probably most do. Maybe people just get a little more.
Maybe most comedians are introverts. Quite possibly. Maybe they're shy.
And that's
by nature.
Totally not what I am. And maybe that's why I'm weirded out by the isolation of it. And they might be weirded out by ttoo much feedback or too much.
Yeah.
So that may be true sometimes.
Or like, are you being for real right now? Like,
right. Where it's like, oh, well, thanks, but I don't know if I can believe that it really.
Yeah.
Oh,
okay, but with you, it's different.
Totally extrovert, which may be in some ways why it helps me as a comic, and maybe in some ways why it feels like a weird life for me, because yes, because an introvert probably loves to have their time just writing alone and like doesn't need much else, and is an observer in life. And I'm both an observer, but I'm very much like a participator too, who wants to talk to people. So that is why I don't do well the just holding myself away and writing a lot alone. So
yeah. You can't be penned up for too long.
That is a good thing to realize about me, which is why I always think, I would do better on a writer's like I would love to be in a room of funny, smart people coming up with things, because I think that would just like make me thrive. That would make me so happy. So
maybe that's where you're headed.
Maybe it is. Yeah.
Writer's room.
I definitely think. Ideally, I'd love to make something that I like, that I created, and also have a writer's room. But otherwise, I'd love to work in someone else's writer's room too, I have a feeling, because I think that seems like me. And I've heard other writers talk about how it's more like doing improv almost. It's less writing in that kind of setting and more just bouncing ideas off each other.
Yeah, that sounds like fun.
I know, it sounds awesome to me. But I did try improv when I first got here, and I hated it, which I would think is so weird of me.
Where were you at?
I tried a groundlings class, and while I really kind of liked the idea of it, to me it was so hard. It was like patting my head and rubbing my stomach or something, because it was like there were all these rules, and there were so many things that for me, I think for other people just made sense, but for me I was just like, wait, what am I supposed to do? Oh wait, and now the light's just going to come up and I'm supposed to just do something. And for some reason, and people think like doing stand-up is terrifying. Not to me. That was so terrifying because there was nothing, though I at least planned, like whether it's going to be funny or work or not, at least I have something planned in stand-up. And I think to some people that just totally is exactly where their energy lies. But I thought, my gosh, I feel like I should love this, but I hate this so much. I feel so bad at this. I thought, I can't do this. So I'm sure I could be capable of it. But for whatever reason, it cracks me up when people think it's so brave what I do, because I'm like, oh, it's not as brave as what I felt like just in a class without even an audience. I thought, oh my gosh, I hate this. So go figure. Because for someone like me, though, who likes to be around other people, it seems like that would be good for me. But for some reason, I was like, oh, dude, I'm not cut out for this. And I could have given it longer, because I'm sure that once you kind of get better at anything, just like we're always telling our children about like piano when our daughter's like tortured. And I'm the one who's always like, let her quit. No, but not exactly. But I don't think she should. But Matt's always like, no, but if she if she gets to a point where she's good enough at it, she's going to start actually enjoying it. But it's just like while everything's still a struggle, it's no fun at all. So
Well, and she's little.
yeah.
Right?
So that's what I felt about improv. I was like, it's too hard. But I bet you if I, got better at it, I'd probably be like, oh, I like this. Because when we're better at stuff, we like doing it more.
So I was wondering, I want to come back to comedy, but I was wondering, when you guys were living in Pennsylvania, how did you decide to end up moving out here?
Well, that was, I had been probably for a little while kind of aching to do more, but we hadn't absolutely said we're going to go somewhere specific different. But I had, been there for 10 years, and I would say a little bit maybe in like the year or more before we actually made the decision to move, we started writing together, which was fun. And we started writing a sitcom that we do still have here, but now we have a second one that we're more excited about. But anyway, we started writing this one that was very much about our family, and that was easy to write. It was like about our family, but with a twist, about a mother who thinks her life is a sitcom. She thinks her life has turned into one, and she's like got commercial breaks and instant scene change. She literally believes that she's living in that life, and her husband doesn't believe her, and nobody else believes her. And the rest of it is all just silly family fun that's totally based on our own children. But so that's what we started writing, which was really fun. But all the while, I was living in this like super traditional, like what I would call like Pleasantville, like very sweet and lovely for my kids to like ride their bikes to their neighbor friends' houses. But I was like dying a little inside. I just had I feel like people were kind of looked on at us like, you're weird, like you weird little creative people. And I thought, oh no, we're the weird ones here. Like, how did this happen? And I used to have mostly other actors, but lots of really creative people in New York. And so to be there and realize that it was so odd to be the creative ones. And so, yeah.
And like shamed for it.
A little
in a
bit,
weird way.
a little bit. Like, and I mean, and I always, I think I always seemed like so much, which is always something that bothers me, I think, throughout my whole life. Even as a little kid, I'd be so chatty and so energetic, and I would feel like people would either say or kind of just give me the message like, you're too much, like slow down. And now I'm like, you know what? You're not enough. Like, I feel like if someone's telling me I'm too much, I'm like, what if I'm not too much? And what if you're just like, you need to catch up? Like, what if you're just not interesting enough and you need to catch up? I mean, that's so rude. And I wouldn't say that. No, and I don't really think that about people, but it always hurt my feelings to think like, just take it down a notch. Like your very essence, it like overwhelms me. And that would always make me be like, well, sorry, so I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, okay, I'll try to be less than my normal self, which feels like crap.
Yeah.
So I would kind of feel like that in general, like amongst the other neighbors.
You're
and
trying
stuff.
to feel like you need to water yourself down, and you can't feel free to express and just be wild and fun and Jordan Toronto.
Yes, I know. And I was like, oh my gosh, I don't feel like I'm totally allowed to be the full Jordan Toronto around here. And maybe that's not true, but it's kind of always what I like sort of felt by like looking around, feeling like, oh, I don't belong being my full self here.
Because the creativity wasn't being welcomed or something.
No, right. And I mean, I think, and bless their hearts, sometimes Matt and I are always like, man, why can't we be regular people who go to work from 9 to 5 and like watch one movie on the weekend and then start over again on Monday? We're like, what a fascinating concept that we've never seemed to ever embrace ever in our lives. And
that is Pleasantville.
It is. That's what I'm saying. And that's where we lived. We lived in like, I mean, I just told who now just turned 11, but my guy, when he was 10, like we were driving around here and I said, well, honey, I know that we loved in so many ways. There was such comfort and such like joy and like the ease of life in Pennsylvania. But I was like, there's this movie, which later I showed them and they really loved. But I was like, there's this movie called Pleasantville. And I was like, we were kind of living in black and white there, you guys. Like, and I was like, there's this movie where, as people start like kind of rediscovering themselves and their real loves and their real passions, they start to have color in their lives. And I was like, so metaphorically, honey, I do feel like we came here for more color in our lives, or at least to be able to express it more. And he totally understood it. He's so deep and awesome. And actually, so is my daughter. My little guy is totally deep, but really young. So bless his heart. But no, she even understood that too. She did. But I mean, we lived in a Norman Rockwell painting. Like that's where I felt like we lived. Like so sweet and make you like, oh, what a nice life. But nice has never been like my goal for myself or my kids. I'm always like, nice, that's not good enough. Like I just thought okay, I'm glad that they're like comfy and things are pleasant. But again, I'm like, pleasant and nice is not. I mean, we're the kind of people who have so many things we look forward to doing and for our kids to be able to do. And I thought, no, nice and pleasant is not going to cut it for me. And so even though it was hard, and it was hard for Clementine, especially to move here. And I just always feel like my heart aches for her because she's the one who really did have special friends there. And it wasn't just as easy to move here and just like restart. My older one just seemed to kind of, he really missed some special friends, but then he sort of reinvented himself and he's just thriving and happy. But I think the thing is she was old enough to really miss people, like to really have known a life there and young enough that it wasn't just totally easy to just be like, I'm just going to recreate one here. So I just felt like she was at a hard age. As people would always be like, oh yeah, I'm sure she'll be fine. It's not like she's in middle school. I'm like, well, that's true, but she's still like a whole person. And at 7 years old, or she knew what she was missing. Like she had friends, like she had a life, like she really, and she still a year and a half later will say, I remember that friend and I remember exactly what we did. And when we drew sidewalk chalk on her driveway, we were just talking about that the other night. And I always just have to be like, without being horribly guilty, which she's plenty of the time tried to make us feel, and she knows it. She'll be like, you ruined my life. And I'm like, I know I ruined your life. I'm so sorry. And I've really been very apologetic for this all along, but sometimes I have to let you know that you could have feelings of, feeling depressed or frustrated or, not have everything always feel perfect, even in Pennsylvania. If you can't believe this, but, it's hard for her because it's very easy then any feeling she has here to be like, it's 'cause I got moved here. So,
right.
So Matt and I are always trying to be like really understanding while also kind of being like, okay, you know what? You'll be okay. And we didn't ruin everything. And what I'm hoping is that we actually ultimately have brought more interesting things into her life. I feel a conflict because I feel like I owe it to her to like do the bigger stuff I came here to do, like to get a bigger acting job or writing and to do it more professionally. But then at the same time, I also feel like I owe her me and my attention, and I'm kind of also terrified at the notion that if something worked out for me and it took me more away, then I'm like, oh my gosh, is everyone going to resent me even more? So there's a part of me that's like, okay, I moved us here. Now I have to like prove why. But also I've come here and part of me is like, oh my gosh, now you just live in California, just, shuttling them around and writing their schedules and not your own. And I just thought, well, I'm not sure that's the best idea to move everybody and then just be essentially almost a stay-at-home mom. So because I'll be right now, I don't have any absolute obligation to anyone else. We're still kind of writing our own stuff. So I can sometimes just fall into like, there's days on end that I'm like, oh, look at that. I'm just being exactly what I was being in Pennsylvania, except I moved everyone here to do it. So,
You're like different sceneries.
I know. And then I'm like, oh, no, that's not what I meant to do. Oh, but there was one other thing that I would say was rather, like, it was one moment, but it was pretty big turning point for me. And it actually did include Clementine, bless her heart. She's the one who didn't want to move, but she might be the one who inspired me to. She and I were listening to Free to Be You and Me, the 70s, like, I don't know if you ever, I listened to it on a record when I was little, like Marlo Thomas and all these people who, it's way too relevant still, all about like the stereotypes for boys and girls and gender roles and things that I'm like, we've improved a little, but not enough that like they still listen to this and go like, oh, that's true, we do that. And I'm like, that's depressing in 2015. But anyway, so we were listening to that. And there's the song, Mommies Are People, and all about how parents can do all these different things. And so we sing the song, and we're singing it together, me and Clementine, and there's this list of things that mommies can do. It's just like, some mommies are ranchers or poetry makers or doctors or teachers or cleaners or bakers. Some mommies drive taxis or sing on TV. That's what I always wanted to do. Yeah, mommies can be almost anything they want to be. And then at the moment of they want to be, I was like reveling in it, going like, I'm a mommy and I'm other things. And then she in the backseat literally goes, Mommy, you're nothing. And I was just like, oh my gosh, like the air pressure like changed in the car. Like I feel like she could sense it and actually went like, oh, no, I just mean you don't have any of the jobs on that list. And I was like, right, I totally understand what you mean, except that like
she said that she followed it up with that.
She did, because she could sense that. I mean, she knew that when she said, Mommy, you're nothing. I mean, she really innocently meant like, oh, but you're not.
You don't
have
list.
that. You're not on that list. But she did say the words, "Mommy, you're nothing." And I thought, I'm going to throw up. Like, because literally there's so many things that happened in that moment that made me be like, oh my gosh, I was reveling in the fact that I'm now a mom and that I used to listen to this when I was her age. And now here I am. And it feels so like, it felt in so many ways like, oh, it's like success. And here I am, her mom, and she's listening to this. And to me, I still, even though I knew that I wasn't like doing this as some major career, obviously when I was living in the middle of State College, Pennsylvania, I still figured that she saw me, because I saw me as still some kind of performer and creative person, but full on she said, you're nothing. And I was like, and I think it like lit something in me to be like, oh my gosh, I have to be something. I thought I was something and a mom, and now I'm like, maybe I'm not. Like, maybe I never learned my free to be with me lesson and I never grew up to be what I thought I was going to be. And then I told her that story again, and she said, I said that? Oh, wow, Mommy, I'm sorry. And I'm like, yeah, I hate to tell you, but that sort of started Mommy on a path to moving us. And then, when we talked about it, see, Matt then got like he had been working for 7 years as a professor in the School of Theater, and they knew we had made one movie that he had written with his brother, and then he directed, and I was in it, his brother was in it, and that was great. We were all proud of ourselves. We made a feature. We got into festivals. We did some things. We won some things. And so that was
the name
kind of
it?
It's called The Pact. And maybe, hopefully, if one of Matt's newest movies will be successful, we'll retroactively maybe get to see The Pact again someday. But anyway, it was really fun. And it's when kind of all of us who were all theater people realized that we also really loved on-camera stuff. But then his boss was really wonderful and said, I think it's time for you to take like a sabbatical year. Or he said at first it could be a semester, but then he later said, well, I need you for this semester. What if you took a whole year? I mean, at first then Matt said, well, I could take this time off. And he's like, well, listen, we could stay in Pennsylvania. I can make a movie anywhere. And I was like, I'm sorry, stay in Pennsylvania? You're literally telling me that we have an opportunity to have you not tied to your teaching here? We are not going to stay in Pennsylvania. Because all of a sudden, like, a light bulb went up in me, like, oh my gosh, wait, whoa, anything's possible. And that's when I was like, no, we need to go somewhere where Mommy can be something and not nothing. Yeah, because there's a tiny part of us that thought, well, should we try going back to New York? And both of us were pretty burned out by that. And both of us knew, for us, life was hard for just the two of us. And we thought, oh yeah, that's what we should do. Bring 3 children to the place that was hard enough for us to live on our own. We thought, no, that doesn't seem right. And that's why we were like, well, let's try California. But we also knew we were moving our children out of a Norman Rockwell painting, so we had to find a place that didn't feel like total city. So Burbank ended up feeling like it had more of the burbs feel, and we were able to move to a place where, we could send them to a good like public school, and so certainly it was a big change. Burbank was a great choice, actually, because it's just like, it does feel just so like family friendly, and just like if we do drive into Hollywood or anywhere else, it's so nice because everything we can get to anywhere, like anywhere.
Close. But
like when everything's just so hard and parking and everything, and just here it's just like sometimes you can just pull in and park in a parking space, and everything isn't like, there's things that are just free and easy, and just the ease of life here just feels a lot more like home without being but with creative people and with more going on, way more going on. Tons. I mean, because again though, still my mom always says, where you go, there you are, because it's like, well, I'm still being a mom. I'm still going to be concerned about their happiness. So of course I will find myself being
it's like now you have flappers down the street.
Yeah, I have flappers down the street.
You can go do stand-up.
Did not have that.
You're writing more.
I know. And I'm home with my husband, and we're working together and collaborating. Like, it's a whole other world that we were not living before. So I am so glad. Because, it took a little convincing of Matt, because I think he was kind of used to doing like an independent film. And he thought, well, maybe I shouldn't go to the land where everyone else is doing it. Like, maybe it is easier just to like make a film. Like, we made it last time in South Dakota where his brother lives.
Yeah,
and so
great.
He was kind of like, well, maybe it isn't the way to go to, go there and try to compete with everyone else. But I think he now says, no, that's not true at all. It's been amazing. We reconnected with people that we knew from long ago. And there's been all kinds of just opportunities to work with people. And he made 2 movies this year, 1 short and 1 feature. And he's like already sent them both out to festivals, but he's still just doing like little tweaks at the end of them. But he's about to have 2 completely done movies in the last year. And so it's certainly been a useful thing. Very soon after we moved here, he was like, Oh, yeah. I'm sorry. I don't know what I was thinking of ever thinking that we shouldn't move here because this is totally the right thing. So
dreams being realized.
yeah,
So important.
definitely.
And for you, I mean, do you feel like your creativity is now like kind of bubbling over more? Like, not that it was shut down before, but
well, but it just didn't have as far to go. Like I would kind of do it and then be like, okay, I don't know what I do with it from here,
Yeah.
And so here, I mean, sometimes I still don't exactly know how everything works, and like we have a couple finished scripts, and we're trying to figure out, how we would ever pitch it, but it's at least we don't know exactly what we're doing, but at least we're like, well, there's so many possibilities. Like there's just opportunities. Like we have to find maybe our right one and find, try to connect with the right people that can help us. But we at least are like, we're in the place where opportunities are possible. Like, before it was like we had a script in Pennsylvania. We're like, we have a script in Pennsylvania, but there's not, especially a TV script is like, well, this is not like the place where this is like very easily just like, so let's just go.
Yeah.
Always movies is a whole different thing because Matt was like, kind of, it's true. Movies it's its own sort of thing and you can kind of do that anywhere. But when we're talking about TV, it's just like, we're where we have to be and we're just meeting lots of wonderful people or reconnecting with old friends. And it does feel so much more like things are just possible.
Yeah.
We get overwhelmed sometimes, like maybe I don't know exactly, but that's a different feeling than feeling like stunted and feeling like I don't know what I can do from here,
Yeah. I wanted to talk about your comedy and what you choose because I saw you perform just once, which are you performing?
I have performed, but it's been a little while just recently, but I performed a few times. I've definitely performed several times since then. No, there have been times, and I was going to tell you this sometime earlier, but there are times when I feel guilty though, where I'm like, well, right before a show, if I'm like furiously writing something or trying to choose what I was going to do, and then they need my attention, I'm always like, oh, this is such a ridiculous conflict. I'm literally choosing between actually interacting with my children live or just writing stuff down about having interacted with them. And I feel sort of guilty that I'm like, no, shh, I have to write what's funny about you, and I'm like, oh, that's kind of like wrong. Some part of me is like, oh, that's so wrong. And so I'm like, well, to an extreme, if I was doing that all the time, where I was just like, no, I don't live with you. I just write about living with you. But I don't think we're there. No, I think I do it infrequently enough that it's not like all the time. But I do feel like I'm like, oh my gosh, am I totally doing a disservice to these people? I just feel like, but at the same time, I think it's also kind of wonderful way that we all laugh at ourselves. And one of the reasons that I started doing comedy again and that I started writing like TV was I read this book by the Everybody Loves Raymond creator, Phil Rosenthal. And I was like so inspired by him because he felt like my people. Like I started reading this book and I was like, oh, that is what I'm so supposed to do. And he talked about being in a writer's room and he talked about also, living his life and then writing basically his life because a lot of it was based on Ray Romano's family, but it was also based on his. And so he said he'd go home and his wife would get mad at him because they'd start fighting and he'd get like this little like glimmer in his eye and she would be like, don't write this down. So like every fight was like a possible little bit of material and he would like already be kind of like, I could use this. And she was like, be here now, fight with me. I know. But then ultimately he would be like, all right. And she'd be like, you can use it. Like, because ultimately it's like, it's probably good stuff that people will relate to, so I know I feel a little like that's a little bit of a weird thing that I'm trying to do where I'm kind of like, I'm here, but I'm also like watching what we do to see what's like funny about it and crazy about it.
Yeah,
so
I think it's really cool because it's like a dichotomous life. It could be.
Yeah.
But I feel like you're meshing the two of them. It's really cool.
Thanks.
And plus, I think there's a lot of really funny things that mothers experience on a daily basis. And we don't get to hear about those really a whole heck of a lot. So I like that you're using that in your comedy.
I know.
And I found it hysterical
so
when
good.
I saw you. And I'm not a parent.
Right. I know. That's what I always worry about because and Flappers, I think, has people, all different kinds of people coming. But I would, a couple times I perform at the Comedy Store and I thought, I know, I feel like such a geezer saying that. But I'm like, it's all these like 20 somethings who are going to be like, what is she talking about? But hopefully it's not so like, it's not so specific that it's not, I mean, because you're saying it's not necessarily that it's exactly relatable, but it's still funny to hear about then, right? Even if it's not your life. Because I always feel like, oh no, now I'm going to get up there and after everybody's like, everybody's dick jokes, I'm going to be like, like vanilla, like, I don't know. And then but then I'm like, don't do that to yourself. Don't do that to yourself. Because you're just like another life experience.
But the dick jokes are reaching.
Yeah.
I feel like it's not taking too much thought.
I know.
To really put together.
I know.
I mean,
because
it's funny.
It can be. And there are certain ones that are more hilarious than others, right? But some are just like, well, that's a guaranteed laugh. And I'm like, well, and first, I'm not really at the stage where it feels like that's what's supposed to come out of me anyway. Like, I know me. I'm not Amy Schumer. Like, I'm at this stage of life. And this is what I have to talk about, I think, because this is just my life. So
I think that's what people are looking for.
Right. And it needs to feel like it's truly coming from me. And if I start trying to be like, oh, it seems like it needs to have this vibe, I'm like, no, nothing. Like, if I try to pretend to be somebody else's vibe, it's not going to work anyway. So
something else that I think, this is just making sense to me, something that I think works for you is the fact that you don't look like you're a parent.
That's good.
You know, when people find out, oh, I'm the mother of 3.
I know. People do go
what's
like,
their...
whoa. Yeah, they do a lot of times. Well, when people are like, oh my gosh, you're why? How is that possible? You're 12. I mean, they don't, but I look young.
You're in your
young.
20s, aren't you? You look like you're in your 20s.
I'm 40, but I don't, and I think that's actually, I kind of feel like, oh, I know people are like, oh no, don't say your age, but I'm kind of proud of it because I'm like, this is good. 40 looks good.
Yeah, it does.
I know. I'm kind of like, screw that. My 40s are going to be my best decade yet. But it does kind of crack me up because I do have to kind of deal with the fact that, I do not scream like harried mother of 3. That's one of the things I think I've been told by somebody who heard me like, just make sure like you address the fact that like one of the things to do in comedy is like deal with whatever people see right away. Like unlike what we're talking about with this is like, people are going to immediately make some kind of assessment of you instantly, like no matter what it is. And to kind of call and kind of say, I know what it is. Don't worry. Like, I'm aware of myself. I think almost does give the audience like, oh, okay. All right. You know who you are, instead of kind of ignoring it. Well, like I did do something recently about like being called a skinny bitch because I feel like people do this all the time where I'm always like, really, do you need to say bitch though? Like, I am skinny and maybe that seems unfair. However, I don't really feel like I deserve you calling me a bitch just because I've had 3 kids and I'm skinny, but maybe I do. And so, no, but I did do something.
Someone said that to you.
Like more than someone. Like many people have called it to me. Like they've literally been like, 3 kids, skinny bitch. And they say it as if I'm going to be like, oh, that's so funny. What a great term for me. You know, like, and I'm like, it's not my favorite. But then I did like a whole thing about how I'm like, well, to be honest, though, I do have 3 kids. Like, I kind of eat whatever I want. I don't actually have any regular exercise, so I really kind of am a bitch. I'm not a bitch. But yeah, so I think sometimes I have to make sure I establish that because that's the thing, the dichotomy of like what I look like and being like, I'm a mom and I'm tired with 3 kids is like, that's not what you look like, right? So people kind of like, that may be true, but I deny that about you.
Yeah, I wouldn't associate the word tired with Jordan Toronto at all.
And it's so funny because I am.
Remember the thing that Sam Christensen said about you, first in line at the tire swing?
Yeah, that is
100%.
Totally, yes.
Yeah.
I think that is. And then the other one is, wait, hang on. Oh, your average, everyday, typical basket of show-stopping quirks, which I like.
That's a good one.
And because I also had to make peace with the idea of like kind of being kind of average and like normal, because that's like some of the worst words for me, because especially coming out of that like Pennsylvania like normal world, like little, and I thought, oh, the idea of being sort of like normal or average or like that's death to me. Like I'd rather be like ugly than normal or something. I don't know if I mean that, but do you know what I mean? Like somehow that was such a bad word though. Like being normal, it's
neither here
like
nor
the
there.
Opposite. Yeah, it was just like, oh my gosh, it's like nice. And I thought, I don't want to be nice. I mean, I want to be like good or kind, but nice just feels like nothingness. It just feels like, oh, that's nice. And I thought, I don't want to be that. And I think what that basically indicates is that I may have that kind of profile as like a busy mom of 3 kids, and I might just be your average, whatever. But I'm not average in a million other ways, though. I'm like also a million not normal things or like out of the ordinary, because I think somehow that's always been true of me, like living like some normal life or being considered sort of normal or regular has always just been like, ew, I hate that.
I mean, there's no passion involved in that.
Everybody wants to be special. So the idea of sort of being normal or like anyone else is just kind of like, ugh. Unless, is that true? Does everyone want to feel special? Or some people are like, no, that's fine. Maybe I'm wrong.
I think you're an artist.
So that's why it matters more.
This is your personality.
Yeah.
I feel like there are some people who are okay with there being a systematic routine.
Yeah.
And
normal would not put them off. They would be like, no, I have a normal life that I'm happy with or whatever.
Yeah,
they wouldn't
that would
associate
be their normal.
it with. But for me, it's like, oh yeah, like how could I be an artist? How could I like express myself being just normal, typical something like
where's the vision? Where are we going? What are we doing? I mean, that doesn't sound like a very comfortable spot for you to be in.
No. And that's where my old street used to feel like people were so nice. Nice though. Again, like they were nice and they just lived their lives and I think that they were like settled. Like some of them might just be there for good. And I'm always like, well, I'm not expecting everyone to be an artist or everyone to be a performer, or everyone to be like to need to move 12 times in their lives, but it's just the notion that they didn't ever say like, and next I'm going to do, or they weren't like looking forward to the next interesting thing happening to them or that they were doing, or so like not living in that creative world where there's always like a next project or a next idea, or was just like, what? Like it just doesn't make sense to me. Mm-hmm. And I did not make sense to them, I don't think. Yeah, really not at all. Like, and then I had a neighbor who once said to me, it's kind of a compliment, but definitely sort of an insult built in, where she said once to me, I think she was my dad was visiting, and she said, for someone who talks so much, I've never heard Jordan say a mean word about anyone. And I was always like, I don't really know how to take that. And then I remember thinking like I've never heard her say a mean word about anyone. And I was like, I'm thinking a mean word right now. I'm just not choosing to say it. So I could.
She was testing you.
I know. I was like,
big time.
I know.
What a passive aggressive way of doing that.
I know. I'm like, don't listen to this, but also maybe do. But no, there was one time she also asked me how my midlife crisis was going, and I was literally writing shows just like Matt was. He was writing movies and we were writing shows together. We were doing the same job. I mean, I guess he was still working at Penn State, but we were about to leave and she asked me how my midlife crisis was going, and then she asked him how his movie was going. No. And I just thought, oh, his is a movie and mine is a midlife crisis. That is an affront to women and you are a woman. I was like, how is that? And I just thought, ooh, okay. Misunderstood, not always liked for my creativity and my not fitting in self. And I thought, okay, that's okay. You're going to go somewhere where more people will, I don't know about understand me, but at least relate to that notion of like being passionate. I thought,
that's so hurtful.
I know. And I was just like, oh my gosh, on so many levels. And I was like, first of all, I'm going to live a lot longer. This is not midlife yet. Second of all,
for real, yeah.
Like, mid, I guess, although I'm like, okay. Well,
I'm 25.
I know. I was like, I was like, I know.
Basically.
I was
I'm 25.
Yeah, I feel like it. So not midlife and also not a crisis, like actually maybe a passion. Yeah, that's the thing is that sometimes like somebody who has a passion that feels like weird and different, it's like, well, what do we do with that? I'm like, well, just, believe me that I have that and I'm doing something with it. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You don't want it to become a midlife crisis.
No.
So that's why
that's true.
You got to live out of it.
That's true. That's true.
I wanted to ask you with, I was thinking we could end by me asking you about what your favorite thing about being a mother is.
Oh. Well, one thing is I think that my interests have broadened. Well, it makes me giggle because sometimes I don't really know when I'm channeling them or when I'm me, because I'll like go down an aisle of a store and I'll see like some Spider-Man and be like, that is so cool. And I'll literally think, do I think that? Do I think that's cool? Or have I just become like, do I just like house the brains of my children and I am like channeling that they think it's cool? But I think it's kind of sweet because like all of a sudden there's all these things in the world that are more interesting to me because I know they care. So I think even if it's stuff that they're upset about or stuff that they get excited about, there's something kind of really cool and fascinating about how like I've now added all of their interests and curiosities to my own. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it really has like, it sounds cheesy, but it has like expanded me a little bit. One thing that's really cool, and I'm now kind of seeing this in all of them because now all of them have been to school. Like even my little guy's been in preschool for a while and he's not always with me. And I think one of the neatest things is to realize that at some point they are not just sort of like the sum of us and what we've taught them and what we do at home, but now they come home and they're like, they've been affected by other friends and other teachers, and all of a sudden they're like a whole separate person. I mean, they always have been, but like when they come home and all of a sudden I'm like, you're just this whole other person who now has like grown through experiences I was never with you for. And in some ways it's sort of like, oh, it's like a little poignant where I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't like rule your whole life. And that's pretty much okay, I think. But they come home and they share stuff with me about their world when they're not with me. And that's why I love school and I love classes that aren't ours, because I'm always so fascinated by people who like homeschool. I'm like, but you never get the opportunity to have them go and come back. And there's plenty of people who are much better to teach them all kinds of things than me. And I love talking to them. I love talking to Kaylor now that he's gotten older, and Clementine too. And I can just tell that when I really give them my attention and we just talk and talk, they're just like, and they feel listened to, and they get to like actually get out stuff from their day. And I just love like just chatting with them. And so I don't think I quite realized either when they were babies and little that I would just like cherish like these really cool, deep conversations. They're just fascinating and cool, and it's so neat. And to like look at Matt, like especially when they're sleeping and all peaceful, that's nice time. We know that nobody like loves them as hard as we do. I mean, we also can like fight and go crazy while we're trying to raise them, but I think also like the idea that like there's no one else on the earth who like feels about them how I feel about them, and that's like a really neat bonding thing for us. I love loving them, and I love doing what I consider the easy stuff, the talking and the loving and the hanging out, but like feeding them and helping them with homework and getting them to bed. These are all things I would hand up to other people in a heartbeat. I'd be like, you can do that part if you're good at that. And actually, because mine have allergies, so we can't do the cheesy things. And then turns out our little one is like a total vegetarian. But a vegetarian is probably being more generous because he barely eats vegetables. So he would be like a dairy-tarian, which is hilarious because he eats the only things that the big ones don't. Like he lives on like, you'll ask him what he wants. And he's like, milk and yogurt. And I'm like, that's the same thing, and the same thing that you've said every day. They're the same thing as each other. And I'm always like, you know that's made of the same thing. But he will like weep if you try to put a piece of meat on his tongue. Hates meat, hates it. Like one of my jokes, I don't know if I did it when you were there, but was just that like the other kids just ordered their same basic boring, just like I'll have a hamburger, nothing on it, nothing at all, like nothing. And then like some fruit on the side. And then we'd get to him and be like, do you have yogurt? And if they didn't, we'd be like, okay, he'll just have an iron supplement for his meal and like ice cream for his child eats nothing. So we, after a while, we're like, okay, we're kind of concerned that you don't have any vitamins coming in, child. But
I seriously think if my parents were to have made me Mexican food,
you would have
growing up, I would have eaten all of it. Yeah, tamales.
So you just didn't discover, or you discovered it with cheese enchiladas, right?
My mom used to make really great like green enchiladas.
Oh, fun. So you would. So if you could have just lived on Mexican food, you would have done that.
Yeah, I would have done that. That
That's
would have been
awesome.
so yummy and fun.
Yeah,
every
you're like,
single
why didn't
dinner.
we do that? I know, we're always trying to be like, can you guys think of any new things you're excited to try? And we'll try it. Let's just try to add one or two things to our lives. I know.
I wanted to ask you this one and I had forgot about it. It's what are the difficulties of being a woman and wanting to have your cake and eat it too?
Okay, I think.
Because I regularly experience anxiety over that.
Yeah. That is, I do think it's hard, and I do think it's different for women, and it like shouldn't be. And in some ways I think it's way better, especially when when I realized that, and I wasn't a stay-at-home mom necessarily because I thought I had to be or I should be, but there's so many things that I still want to be to my kids or I want to be available for. But then I just so desperately want just exactly what I want career-wise too. And I get a little like kind of terrified that I'm going to just totally wreck one, or just, and that I really, that it's more of an either or. And then I get encouraged and think, no, I really think I can figure it out. I can be creative. But I also think like, and this might just be his personality, but my husband's always been like, oh, I never expected that you'd want to like just stay home with our kids. I mean, I'm super grateful that they've had you so much because I love that they have, but he's never been one who thought that was going to be my life overall. So then we would get into stuff where I would say like, but now, you've gotten to do this, and this. And then we would have fights where I'd be like, well, you've gotten to direct and teach. And he'd be like teaching, but then he'd go away for 5 or 6 weeks and direct a show somewhere else. And we'd be on a road trip or something and we'd pass by something and he'd be like, oh, that town has the greatest theater. I'd love to work there. And I'm always like, oh. And I realized I'd become like this crabby like woman who was like, all I would do is try to find a playground, and I realized that I'm like, oh no, I've become like, I was becoming the one who was crabby about the like theater, the thing that I used to love with him and do the same as him. And all of a sudden I had like, things had kind of gotten, they had changed, and all of a sudden I was all crabby and resentful of the things he was pursuing. And I had to admit that there were times I kept trying to switch. I kept wanting to be like, let's trade. And he never wants to trade. And I'm like, okay. So he's always like, honey, I feel like we can be creative. Just you do more, but don't ask me to do less. And there's this part of me now as a mom and a woman who's just kind of like, I think we can do that to a certain point, but after a while, I something has to give. And usually I feel like I just sort of naturally am the one who's like, okay, well, I just have to make sure we take care of this or that, and I don't want to be like this. I hate to be the normal, traditional, like whatever, but I think just inherently I will sacrifice a little bit because I just want things to be a certain way for the family, for the kids. And not that he will sacrifice, but I don't think that for a man, I don't think it just occurs quite as quickly and easily that like, I probably can't have that. So there'd be times when I'd be really kind of bitchy about it and be like, oh, you're thinking like a single guy. And I don't think he was always, but there'd be times when I'm just like, you really don't like, just like hear of something and then go, oh, it's just not realistic. Like that's going to be so hard to juggle. And I think he's always just sort of like, we just can. We can have it all. We can have it. We just can. Somehow we'll make it work. And I like his positivity, and I probably could use a little bit more of it. But I'd be like, well, it depends on what we consider making it work. Because I do think you lose, like after a while, I'm like, yeah, we could both work tons and be all fulfilled, and we could make sure our kids are taken care of, but like not by us much. And so there are losses in this. And I think maybe what I have realized is that I maybe used to think that those losses were more okay than now I think they are, because now that I'm here in real life as a grown up wanting things, but also being a mom. And I just think I used to just be like, oh, we'll just do it all. Whatever. Just do what it takes. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, but what if what it takes is like sacrificing too much and having my kids just like not see me? And it's just like, that also sounds so bad. I just want to throw up. But then, yeah, really, I do kind of, I think just kind of go back and forth between like the you're nothing. So, okay, I gotta go do what it is I want to do into like, but like one of the reasons that she thought I was nothing on that list is because I'd spent a lot of precious time with her growing up. And so I'm like, oh crap, because there's just no exactly easy answer there. And sometimes I feel kind of in like an arbitrary hurry, which I guess I'm not in. I think, yes, in some ways it's like, well, sure, at different stages of your life, there's a season for everything. Mm-hmm. But I also kind of feel like, but I just want to do it now. And just, I got to figure out how to do it now. And
yeah.
So, I don't know. And I don't want to be, I've talked to an old friend who said, I feel like my mom was so positive and used to say I could have it all and was like, sort of like, dream big and anything's possible for you as a woman, as a person. And she's like, I kind of feel mad at her. I was like, oh, it's so sad to me. Like where she was like, I kind of feel like now that I have kids, I'm like, why did she tell me that? Because I don't think it's totally true. I really don't think I can have it all. And I was like, oh, well, and I'm still always a little bit more like, oh, Pollyanna, like, yeah, you can somehow. I don't know. And then I kind of am like, I have my moments where I'm like, no, I don't know. It's possible. But I never want to just be like, no, I can't. No way. I don't know. So I don't want to give it up. But I also really struggle with like, can I actually, well, and if I have it all, will I be remotely happy? Like, will I just be losing my mind? And will I be able to enjoy any of it? I mean, I know that sounds so cheesy and so like stereotypical, but will I just be like this harried person, like writing or acting or whatever, who's like kind of half there and then half there for them? And it sucks.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you is what, do you want to be pursuing certain artistic things or do you feel like you have to because of that comment? Because I think it's a difference, from where your motivation's coming from then. Like if you truly want to, because it's like, because I think artists have to create. I think when artists stop creating, that then like an unhealthy cancer starts setting in. Something that like the expression needs to come out
somehow
in some form.
Right.
That could be making a cake. I mean, that could be baking bread. It doesn't,
Right.
I mean, it doesn't have to be like killing yourself over putting on a full-on show or something.
I think there is some times in me that when I get a little like scared of doing it and I don't really know how to proceed, then I sort of say, well, I just feel like I have to do it because I said I would. And again, I think that's like me and my husband saying we have to stay together because we've tried so hard to keep this relationship going, and it's not a reason to stay together. And so like, again, I don't want to pursue something that isn't going to bring me joy just because I'm like, I said I was going to do it my whole life in some form. If I really just am honest with myself and I say, what do you love doing? Like, what do you want to be doing more of all the time? And I think like when I read that book and I realized, oh my gosh, to be in like a writer's room and to surround myself with smart, funny people all day long and just create stuff and bounce stuff off and to make something together. And it's fun when my husband and I do it. And it's even fun sometimes when I do it by myself, but it's not the same. So I think if I just hold true to be like, but what do you actually want to be doing? Like, not what do you want to have done? Like, what do you want to be like, because that can be true too. It's like, oh, I wanted to have been on Broadway. And I actually think, I think I would have enjoyed the process of being in a show. But also that was like one of those like idea dreams of like what I thought was the end result of whatever I was going for. And but what do you want to be doing every single day when you wake up that'll make you feel like the creative person? And I wrote like this little vision once, my husband and I both wrote, and there was definite like, I go in my non-mommy car. I'm like, so there's definitely a point of me that's like, I have my own space and my own place that I go off to. And that is kind of significant to me. I think just because there's like the family and everything gets like so globbed together. So the idea of literally being like, and then I go to a place that's mine, that actually alone is kind of glorious to me. And I haven't quite found, even just being home. I think he's good at working at home. And sometimes I'm like, I gotta go. I want to just go somewhere else to kind of like even metaphorically just be like, okay, now I'm home and now I'm not, and I'm doing something else. I don't want to arbitrarily give myself dues to pay that may not even lead me to what I want to do. Because I think I'll do that to myself where I'll be like, well, it seems like people who get there do this and this and this. Because I think what I end up doing is kind of like getting scared and then putting things up like, so probably what I should do first is, and then I'm like, is that even what you want to be doing? I don't know. Like, I think with acting, it'd be like, well, if I want to do my own show, I probably need to also be proving myself as an actor, so then I should go on audition and I should do all these other things. And then I'm like, do you want to, or do you want? And so I keep having to check in and be like, is that what you want to create? Or are you just kind of pretending you have to take someone else's path because you're almost like scared of like figuring it out? I don't know. And then with creativity, I don't think there are like, I mean, you hear people's stories and people get to places where they are a million different ways. And but I also think I don't want to seem like someone who thinks I can just be like, bam, I'm exactly what I want to be. So I think that's when I start to be like, so here's my plan, because I want to sound like reasonable or humble or like I understand that it's not that easy or something. And I think that's stupid. I think that's so stupid.
I think I
I worry about that.
I think you can just start doing what it is exactly that you want to do.
Which is what you're doing.
Which is, I'm trying to go for it.
I think that's so good because you're like, I love asking questions. I love interviewing people. So I'm going
I
to
really
exactly do that. I'm going to find a way to just do it now.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Because I think this is a good place to start, and then it will lead to something.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I don't exactly know where I'm going. Yeah. But I know I could do this until I die, and I would be really happy doing that.
That is a really good thing to know, right? Because you're like, if it doesn't lead to anything, I've still done what I love to do.
Yeah.
Like, I've just done it.
Yeah.
And I haven't waited for anyone's permission to do it. That's the other thing, is sometimes these things like TV shows, like, oh my gosh, there's so many people and I have to wait for permission to do it.
Yeah,
and I'm like, that notion of almost like waiting for permission to do what I'm here to do is like, no.
Yeah, I feel bad for the actors in that sense, because
that is the mentality a lot of times. Like, someone else has to let me do.
Yeah. And then you guys are on hold. So I feel like the actors have to create with their partners, whoever's around them, friends and whatever, to write your own roles for yourself so that you can act.
And you don't feel like you're waiting for someone else to let you. I know.
Yeah, it's silly.
And that's probably why I love writing more lately, because I'm like, I'm too old for this stuff. I don't want to just sit around and like audition and for stuff that some of it may be great and some of it I may not even care about doing. I'm just trying to do the thing of being an actor. And so I was like, I'm not doing that anymore. I'm going to do what I love to do, create stuff and act in it when I can.
Yeah, and pitch your ideas. Because I think it's really cool that you're writing things.
I know, I do love that. And I realized too that sometimes I was getting so precious about like that one first thing we wrote, and then I've been like, oh my gosh, I'm having all these ideas. And that feels so good because it also takes pressure off every single thing we write. If I'm like, oh, but I could also do this, and I love this idea, and this doesn't have to be me. This could star somebody else that they could cast. And all of a sudden, like, if I start to let myself be like, oh my gosh, you are a well of idea, like, then it also empowers me to realize that I'm not just like begging someone to like my one or two ideas. And I'm like, those are not the only ideas you're ever going to have. Like, you're going to have tons of ideas. Yeah. And there's a lot in you that you can give. So also, it just doesn't put so much pressure on every little thing.
Jordan, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for giving me a couple hours of your time today.
Loved it. Thank you.
I'm looking forward to more stand-up shows, and I wish you luck with if you guys start pitching your scripts. I hope that happens for you sooner than later. Did you want to say anything to close out?
Just thank you so much. It's fun to be interviewed and just kind of have to articulate how I feel about things. That is usually just kind of, a lot of it's just spinning around in my own head. So thank you. And I love it. I mean, I love talking and I love just sharing stories. I just appreciate it. It was fun. It was really fun for me. But I will be something and not nothing. Maybe that's another one of my shows. Not nothing. Don't know what I am, but I am not nothing.
To see photos of Jordan doing stand-up at Flappers, or photos of Jordan and her sweet family, head to my website, ColleenLindell.com, where you can also find links to the Free to Be You and Me song, Parents Are People Too, and Phil Rosenthal's book, You're Lucky, You're Funny, How Life Becomes a Sitcom. Jordan, as always, it was a pleasure talking with you and your bright and shiny personality. I look forward to seeing your sitcom on TV. Thank you to the musically talented Chris Collins for letting me use this song, Strawberry Sherry, from the album Indie Music Box. You can find more of Chris' music at indiemusicbox.com. As always, thank you for listening. Your ears are sacred ground. This episode was recorded on location in Burbank, California.